All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode. I think it's 342 of Stu and the Nunn. Nunn, isn't it great to see those pictures all over again, man?
Every time I see that, like, man, there's some amazing people in there. One, that we're blessed enough to call friends, and two, like, I was just now I was counting the ones that are currently in the news or have done really big things recently.
Yes.
And there was a lot, like Scott Mann, like Chad Robichaux, Tim Kennedy, like those guys just did, big things. You got the Wolfman on there, working with Trump right now. Like there's just big things like those guys, like grill your ass off,
Yeah, there's a lot. We've had a lot of guests. We've had a lot of guests. It goes way back.
Yeah, no, like,
even well before the show too. Well before.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's awesome. I love it. It makes me a little nostalgic, but hey, we all got to live our lives.
Yeah, I need to record a new outro, but I've looked at that. Like, I don't want to ever talk. I mean, that one's fine. Like, I don't ever think I'd ever want to record a new one to that. And it looks great. But hey, good to see you, buddy. It's been a while, and it's crazy, man. We're down to 19 days before the election.
It's getting there, right?
Here in America, yeah. So I don't, you're down in the very, very southern studio in Cabo San Lucas. So I know when you've been able to make it many times before. We've talked about kind of what you hear down there from the American guests and patrons that, it's kind of where you get a lot of your news besides us texting or whatever. But as it gets closer, and Mexico just went through their own election a month ago. I guess what are some of the, we'll just jump right into it, talk about that. We'll hit that first, right? We're 19 days out, but what are you hearing down there? What's the sense? Are you picking up a change of anything, or is it still the same stuff you've been hearing?
So the only time we see anything political in terms of the U.S. politics during college football commercials and pro football commercials.
Oh, lots of those lately.
Yeah,
lots of
and
commercials.
So, we, as part of our business model down here, we have a bar, and in that bar, we show games, and so like hook them because Austin's doing great this year, but that's really the only time that we're seeing that much political stuff. We're not inundated with the media down here like you are there. Culturally, it's there's not a TV in every location playing CNN or Fox or MSNBC or whatever, so we're not constantly being inundated with it, which is really nice. And what we tend to get are highlights of only big things, like big things. So I'm also in an industry that's completely and 100% dependent on people's disposable incomes.
Right.
So the people that are interacting with us are here because they have the disposable income to do that right now. Where I would say that the vast majority of Americans do not have that right now.
Have you seen it change? Have you seen the type of clientele change, or have you heard things from people when they've been like, I don't know when I'll ever be able to do this again? Like I pulled out all.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and yeah, like you're not prompting that. That's a real conversation that happens frequently.
Do people have to try to go? I mean, people make it down and they buy flights, but do they still try to go like, oh, I can only do a couple-hour trip. I really can't swing the whole day. I can only go out once. I mean, are they trying to do it?
No, you know, we have a really good return clientele. You know, Cabo, like a lot of Mexican vacation destinations and some American vacation destinations, have timeshares. So, you know, people are financially committed to coming, you know, a week, a year, and tend to fish with us 2-3 days. And, you know, now they're like, oh, we're only fishing a day or a half day.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they're here because they're financially committed. The cost of airline, you know, tickets is through the roof right now. It's like, I don't know what it's like domestically, but, you know, flights in and out of here, they're a lot more than they normally have been, which I think is playing a role. We're experiencing about a 30% decrease in airport, you know, travel, as well as about a 40% decrease in cruise ship travel from 2023 so far in 2024. So numbers are way down, and a lot of that is
The economy.
directly attributed to the, you know, people not having the money to do it.
Right.
So the people that we do see and interact with, they all tend to lean a certain direction. They are a little bit hopeful for the election, but it also seems that the vast majority of people are terrified about the election. Most of the revenue streams and economies based around like the nautical maritime industry, very concerned about the election. So the United States, you know, Mexico just changed over. The inauguration was the 1st of October, so a couple of weeks ago. And Claudia Sheinbaum is now the El Presidenta.
Female, right? Lady.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, she is kind of the prodigy coming out of the previous administration, to where a lot of big things happened. The former president, he set term limits on that office. You know, they did a whole redesign of the Mexican Supreme Court, forcing, like, taking the power away from the administration to help select those justices. So now, like, Mexican Supreme Court justices, that's a ballot issue. So the general public vote on their Supreme Court justices. It did a lot of really neat things. Very Trump-esque in terms of swamp cleaning, which Mexico really needed, and still needs.
Yeah.
But like really, you know, took some efforts towards nepotism, took some efforts towards some of that.
Is she, and you think she is on board with all that too?
I think so. I mean, we're going to find out, right?
Yeah.
But what we do know is, you know, the U.S.-Mexican relations probably were better in the Alamo than they are today. And, do
you think they'll get better if Trump gets elected?
Yeah, well, they can't get worse, right?
Really, it's that bad? Because even with the border being open, taking people in,
right. But like that's a huge problem, right? So everyone has this, one, the vast majority of people crossing the border into the United States aren't Mexican, right? Yeah, there are definitely Mexicans crossing into the border, but the vast majority.
Would it be fair to say, because most of the Mexicans had already come in that want to come in, and that was kind of years ago?
Like, I mean, they've had a lot of opportunity to get in, so they are, right? But all these people from these other countries, they have to go through Mexico to get in. That's a huge burden on the Mexican people, a huge burden. It's a security issue. It's, financial issue. It's a social issue. And so, like, when you have an administration not helping at all, right? Not helping the border in any capacity, the other administration obviously is going to get very frustrated.
Yeah.
And, like, here you got an administration that's, worked hard for the past 6 years to work on corruption and fight cartels. And then you got, like, the neighbor going, yeah, don't worry about it. Come on in.
Right.
Like,
which is enabling the cartels to
yeah. And then here now there's a huge influx of cash. There's all this stuff. So yeah, there's definitely frustrations there, and you can see it, and it's palpable. And one thing I'll say is, like, Mexicans want security. They don't like the lack of security. That's one of the reasons why cartels have grown to such great strength. Because if the people believe that they're the best form of security, well, they're going to support what they think the best form of security is, or at least the winning security.
Right.
So the United States could absolutely be a better neighbor, and, get their border under control. Everyone keeps saying the Mexican border. No, it's a world border. It's a shared border. And, we don't have to go south to see that. Not too far away from where you're at, the northern border is seeing all kinds of infiltration. It's through the roof,
through the roof. Yes.
And, like, let's go Canada, all of a sudden Canada's like, oh wait, we gotta do something. But no, it's really interesting to sit here as like a third party outsider, because I really feel that way. When we do see American television, or we, for watching it for football and stuff like that, it really appears to us that Kamala Harris is, like, it's a done deal, right? That's really kind of how it gets portrayed. And, like, anyone that thinks otherwise is like this horrible person. You can't possibly like these commercials, and it's hilarious because the Trump commercials that we do get to see tend to only be like Kamala Harris saying things herself, like not a narrator. Like, it's
right out of the horse's mouth,
saying things, and it's like, and this, I'm Donald Trump, and I support this message, or whatever it is.
Yeah, they provide plenty of commercial fodder. Yeah.
Like the transgender, like, prison thing where she's
that's gotten a lot of spread. That's gotten a lot of coverage here in the U.S. of being very effective, including from people on the left going that, because they've been showing a lot in football games going, that's a very effective message because it's her saying it. And it's
the other one that caught my attention is it doesn't matter that your guns are responsibly owned and in your locked home. That doesn't mean we're not going to come in and check it out to make sure that you're being responsible with them within your locked home. It's like, oh, like, that's definitely sounds like a constitutional violation.
Yeah.
At least 3, maybe this many amendments that you're violating there.
That's interesting. I don't know if you do, but I mean, we've been very observant of politics over the years, you and I both. I don't remember so many presidential campaign commercials happening in football games in 2020 or 2016 or anything prior. I don't remember that many. It seems like there are a lot. like they know that's where to reach as many people as possible, I guess.
Well, so I think, if we're looking at television, so this is like a media answer. I think if you look at television, you're going to find that ratings on television are no longer on news channels. Ratings on television are no longer on soap operas, and ratings on television are no longer on, like sitcoms. That's all like gone streaming, like people, the most popular sitcom for the past couple of years has been on Apple, right? Ted Lasso.
Right.
The year before that was Schitt's Creek on Netflix. Shout out to
Canadian
to Shoresies and the boys.
Yes.
Like people have gone away from traditional television for a lot of things, and football and sports tends to be where they haven't mastered the online, profile yet.
Right.
You got ESPN Plus, but you got a lot of issues with streaming services. They still don't have all the contracts for the different college.
Dude, you don't have Amazon Prime. You're missing out on Thursday night. People are pissed.
Right. Yeah. No, like that's a perfect example. So I think that's a key place to capture people, because I guess they should have been putting it on WNBA games, because apparently that's the only thing that people watch on television right now.
Yeah.
But or they don't.
Well, they do watch my Bills, but I just got to.
Or they don't.
Yeah.
But it's really a place where you have a lot of Americans, and it's tribal, and I think that's a great audience to appeal to, because if you're a Chicago Bears fan and they're playing the Vikings, it's us versus them, right? Or Green Bay or whatever.
Right.
It's like this very tribal mentality. And so that's a great time to talk to people, because then you find out what tribe they're with. I would say, though, that while the media is saying one thing and we're kind of getting this Kamala's got it kind of thing, she's so good she doesn't even need to talk to people. I haven't met anyone here excited for that administration.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, it's
but it's also who I talk to, right? So I'm in a bit of an echo chamber with people that
are lean typically a little bit more right,
yeah.
because they're people that have money and they care about their money and their investments and their taxes and their stock market, right? Yeah, so interesting take it that direction here. A couple things. One, one thing you're probably not seeing down there, obviously, you just mentioned what you do see and hear, and it's commercials, is the polls, and people will say you can take the polls for you got to take them with a grain of salt, right? We all know that people can spin polls, they can sample certain audiences. I've talked about on this show many times how they have called this house. And many times my wife, will not talk to him. I see the caller ID. I won't even answer it, but she will. And sometimes she'll play with them and go through and all that stuff. And many times when they get near the end and they ask who she would vote for today, if they, that kind of stuff. And if she says anything but what they want to hear, which is typically the left, and this could be for down ballot local elections, we get polled for that, state elections, county, that kind of stuff, or the presidential election, the connection drops. And they'll hang up, and that's like that one didn't count because they weren't able to finish it, right? We've seen it a number of times, right? They will, if you don't finish up with the way they wanted, they will just drop the connection and they go on to call someone else. That one was a bad sampling. So, again, if you do all your polling around universities and Broadway and the theater district, you're going to get a certain type of thing versus you do it at the Walmart in Birmingham, Alabama. But there are some Quinnipiac, Gallups, and a couple different ones that are pretty reputable. And obviously, they're mostly focusing on swing states. And one thing that is very apparent now, and it is really starting to come out, including on the polls from places that would consider very left-leaning organizations like ABC, NBC, and stuff, is that any bump that Kamala Harris had after the DNC is gone. And right now, on some of the polls, on nationwide polls, Trump is up 2 to 3 points over Kamala. In the 7 swing states, depending on which poll you look, he is up on 5 or 6 of the swing states, with the only one that he is down, that he hasn't polled above her on, is Wisconsin, and it's by and she's ahead by 0.3 of a point. Like, that's it. He is winning every swing state right now. He's winning Georgia by, I think, 4 or 5 points, North Carolina by 5 points. So again, take them for what they are, but when the left-leaning media starts like highlighting, hey, things are switching, and this is going to be a neck and neck race, I think you got to take that for what it is.
Well, I agree with you. It's so hard to tell the polls. However, I will say what I think is a delightful indicator and a redeeming indicator for American society is Saturday Night Live is making fun of her.
Yes, they are.
Okay,
and they've done it great the last couple of weeks.
And yeah, and like bringing back Maya Rudolph, like, I mean, that's just classic. She's just an amazing comedian. But there was this "you can't make fun of Joe Biden" like
undertow. Yeah, there was like a written law.
Name a comedian that did Joe Biden.
Right.
I mean, you can name comedians that have done Bill Clinton, Ronald Reagan,
Bush,
Nixon, all the Bushes. I mean, Madeleine Albright.
right.
They did her, right. They did Mayor Giuliani. Like, they've gone and like had no problem making fun of every politician.
They left Biden alone. Yeah.
Tina Fey, like rejuvenated her career off of making fun of Sarah Palin. No one's made fun of the Biden-Harris administration
until about 3 weeks ago,
and that's like green light, kink.
And it's been the opener the last few weeks. It's the opener.
I mean,
it's not just a skit.
It takes me back to the old Dana Carvey days, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so I love it. I love it because I grew up loving Saturday Night Live and then hating it because
it got so jaded. It wasn't satire anymore. It was
just like, how do we just talk smack, about one person only.
It's funny, when I was way back when, if I could spin it back to about 2007, when I was hanging out with Gary Trudeau, we were doing the book tour thing, and stuff. And I tell him all the time, he's one of my favorite liberals. I told him, I said, dude, and of course I love Doonesbury cartoon that he's been drawing for forever. But I'm like, there's no more satire. I'm like, there's no more satire in the late night. And this is back then. I'm like, there's no more satire in the late night talk shows or anything. I'm like, everyone just went all in one side. And I'm like, that's what people miss. I said, and I told him, I said, back in the Doonesbury, you made fun of Clinton. He was a feather. You made fun of Bush. And he always drew some kind of emoji or icon to represent the president. He never actually drew him. And I'm like, it's not that way anymore. It's all one sided. I'm like, and every late night talk show is that way. That it's not satire if you just lean in on one side and never make fun of everyone.
No, and so I think it's redeeming. Like, I think I think the scariest thing for me is, like, I had to watch it on Instagram so I could see it here, and that was the debate.
The Kamala Trump debate or the Biden Trump debate?
Kamala Trump debate. And the things that she said, right? So one, like, there was zero fact checking, right? They didn't fact check her. But what was so scary is the things that she said didn't require fact checking. They required you to graduate from high school. So if you're 18 years old and you're registered as a voter, there's a really good chance that you took U.S. government or some basic civics class in the United States.
Right.
It's a graduation requirement, GED requirement, graduation.
At least world government, U.S. history, something. Right.
Yeah. Right. So you should know that there's 3 branches of government. You should know that. So when someone says something as idiotic and retarded as the Trump abortion ban. Like, a man can't do that. A woman can't do that. No, that takes a legislative body to do, right? They can influence it for sure. They can suggest it for sure, but you can't do that.
Right.
Trump didn't repeal Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade is a Supreme Court case. The only people that can do anything with a Supreme Court case are the people called the Supreme Court. I even sounded like Kamala right there, but it
they
doesn't
court,
require,
they're supreme and they make supreme decisions as a court,
and then the decision's supreme. But it's basic civics and your basic understanding of how your country operates. You don't need a fact checker, because you can be like, well, I can't believe a presidential candidate is saying something so wrong. Not an opinion, not about someone's character assassination. No, this guy did this. No, that guy cannot do that.
And part of that
can't,
civics,
your president, do it either.
Part of that civics study is to understand the Constitution and all the founding documents, or the Bill of Rights and everything like that. And all the Supreme Court's job is to interpret the Constitution and enforce as per the best they can tell the authors of the Constitution meant. And one of the key things in that, and my favorite part of the Constitution is, as geeky as it sounds, is the 10th Amendment, right? Which is the basis of all libertarianism, which is, it's states' rights, which is, if the 10th Amendment, if I can boil it down for people watching and listening, maybe aren't up on the latest, it says, if the Constitution doesn't ban a state from doing it, or doesn't say that the federal government has to do it, tax and provide for interstate commerce and all that kind of stuff, provide for the security of the country. If it doesn't say one of those two things, it's on the states. Yeah. So all that decision was the Supreme Court reevaluating the Roe v. Wade decision, which, a lot of people on the left hate to say, or don't want to admit, but, Ruth Bader Ginsburg had said for at least the last 5 years, if not from the start of it, that it should not have been at the federal level, and it was not good written policy. Yeah. All they did is reevaluate and say, you know what? That's right. This is not in the Constitution. There's nothing that says the federal government should provide or ban this. So it goes back to the states. And that's all they did, is exercise the 10th Amendment.
And I again, this is what's so mind blowing. And I've had this discussion, and this dialogue, with people that want to talk about that point in particular. It's like, I would think that you would be very excited that happened, because now you have a bigger voice. You have a louder voice. Your vote is more powerful because you can actually vote. You on this topic, you can go to your local representative, your state rep, your state senator, and you can go to your local guy and be like, or gal, and be like, hey, I feel this way about this topic. I'm going to give you $150 towards your campaign, and I want you to represent me down the street in Austin and represent my wife, my daughters. I want you to go do that.
Right.
And or if I was a woman,
it puts the power back in the people.
Right. And you would think that in itself should be celebrated.
In the last 20, you probably don't know this.
Man, how dare you do this thing?
In the last 24 hours prior to this airing, there were two major interviews that happened. Both were on Fox News. One was with Harris Faulkner. President Trump sat down with a all-woman focus group, all-woman town hall, and did an hour. And abortion was definitely covered. And then later on was Kamala Harris sat down for 30 minutes with Brett Baer. And that both happened in the last 24 hours. And what's interesting was, and of course they brought up abortion. These are women coming up from Texas, or I'm in Georgia. I'm sorry, it was in Georgia, coming up asking questions. And they asked about that. And he was very clear. He talked about what I just, was put it back to the people. And he talked about how, hey, you would think Ohio, which is kind of conservative, would have went, well, guess what? The people of Ohio voted, and they approved abortions up to a certain length. It was probably more liberal than people thought for the state of Ohio, but they said no, we want to have this be available in our state up to a certain duration of the pregnancy. Now there were other ones brought up like Alabama, where they had a judge that said IVF's illegal, blah blah blah, and all this stuff. And as President Trump said, within an hour he released a statement. And the next day, the Alabama legislature overturned the judge and put it in place and said, no, IVF is protected. And, he's like you said, Kamala can say whatever, whoever can say, but President Trump has been saying he's all for IVF. Yeah, and he's all for, and he said it's on the states. And if the states go too far, and he said, hey, some have gone too far. He told Harris this. Some have gone too far. That will get corrected, just like it did in Alabama. They will get it corrected. The ship will right itself. Yeah. They may not all be the same.
But he didn't do that.
No. But one thing I learned, I didn't know, Toby, I did not know this. Did you know that when Roe v. Wade was in place, that was only for first and second trimester? And if there were abortions wanted in third trimester, that was actually still on the states? I did not learn that until I saw in the last day that third trimester abortions still went back to the states. Only first and second trimester abortions were protected, if you would, allowed, or whatever you want to say, under Roe v. Wade. I never knew that that third trimester
that wasn't actually even Roe v. Wade. That was a secondary court precedence that used Roe v. Wade as precedence to support that case. I don't even think abortion's mentioned in Roe v. Wade.
No, I can't say. I don't want to speak out of turn. I'm not sure.
But anyway, the scary thing is for me is we're having this election and people are losing their mind. They're saying the most ridiculous stuff. It's crazy vitriol. It's so violent. It's so, there's been 2 assassination attempts and everyone's getting riled up to go vote for 2 people that nobody picked. Like, that's the scariest thing to me.
What do you know? I mean, nobody picked Kamala, but Trump went through primaries. He went through
this cycle, right?
Yeah, no, he went through primaries.
He won primaries this cycle.
Yeah, he won primaries. I remember because he was against Haley. He was against Ron DeSantis and Vivek. He went against all of them. He was picked through the Democratic process. She was not. And now, of course, it came out afterwards.
It was very abbreviated. It wasn't like last time. He didn't stand up on stage with 30 people and have to clean them down.
He started with like 5 or 6 instead of 17. And he cleaned house. Remember, there were 3 debates, and he never went to one because he was like, "I don't need to. Everyone here is competing."
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah,
right,
I do remember that. Sorry, I stand corrected.
Yeah, no.
Bottom line,
but she wasn't. She was not. She wasn't going to vote. Yeah, and the sad thing is, what Toby? What people are missing?
She was nominated by somebody that didn't win a primary either.
Right, and the sad thing, what people are missing, is that the Democratic leadership thwarted our national or our Constitution and the electoral process. And I say that for this reason, because they came out afterwards and admitted, when Pelosi is now admitted, in fact, she just said the other day that she has not talked to Biden since she forced him down. But she came out afterwards and said she went to him and said that there was no way he was going to win. He was bringing everyone else down. He had the dropout, right? They strong-armed, and they've admitted that's what they did. So rather than say, well, you're the person everyone picked and you're our candidate, they knew they were not going to win. It's almost like they forfeited knowing they were not going to win. And by forfeiting, the other team could come in and play. And by admitting that rather than letting the election process and the Democratic process play out, which he was the guy picked in all the primaries, they said, no, you have to drop out because you're not going to win. We don't stand a chance. We got to swap you out at the last second.
Yeah,
that's what makes that completely an illegal process, because he did not drop out for medical reasons. He did not drop out.
I don't believe the DNC had any intention of putting anyone up for a primary. I don't believe.
I think they did.
I don't believe the DNC.
They didn't want her. I don't think they wanted her. I'm telling you.
But I don't. Well, they did because they picked her.
No, he picked her. Remember, he didn't. He didn't endorse her on his resignation. Now, a couple things I heard from different sources. I don't know how close they are, how
But
realistic.
he didn't win a primary. So how like the
He did.
DNC?
No, he did. He won
They have
primaries because he was the
which primaries
incumbent.
did he win?
Remember, he won every one but Guam. It was the first time ever that an incumbent sitting president did not win every single state. There was a dude that won Guam. You could Google, I don't know. He won, I want to say it was Guam. That was not Biden. It was the first time, I think, in a long time, I don't know, we'd have to have Rob double check it, where an incumbent sitting president did not win every single primary. He didn't win Guam. So Guam picked someone else. It was a big deal because he was in, so he won every primary. He steamrolled them. It was
No, I'm talking about last time.
Yeah, last time he only won South Carolina. Yeah, he only won South Carolina.
He didn't even win his own state.
Yeah, because Clyburn said, "I'll support you, but you got to put a black female into the next Supreme Court justice." That was the only reason why Clyburn supported him. South Carolina was the only one he won until the DNC got in place and strong armed everybody out, like Bernie, like they did in 2016.
Yeah. No.
So, if I can spin it back for a sec, so what they did. Now, was interesting, and back to my sources and things I've heard, is that he did not want Kamala either. That's why when he resigned, he didn't mention endorsing her. And it took about 3 or 4 hours to do it. Now, what I've heard, maybe it was Jill, maybe it was someone else, but when he realized they were forcing him out, he knew they wanted to go to a brokered convention, and they wanted to probably pick Newsom or somebody else. They did not want Kamala. I mean, she dropped out in the 2020 primary. She was the first one out. She didn't have a chance, right? Nobody likes her, right? She's word salad, blah, blah, blah. To get them back and give them a big FU. That's why 2 or 3 hours later, he wrote a quick little blurb and endorsed her as the VP. He locked her in because he knew the DNC did not want her, and he's endorsed her, which made her guaranteed. She's the damn VP. You have to go with her, especially when the president's stepping aside and saying, "I put full support behind her." He forced the DNC's hand and the Democratic leadership to have to take her and not pick anyone else. They didn't have a chance. He did that. Again, it probably was Jill or somebody who was very pissed, or she talked him into it to make him do that, to put a big screw you to the DNC. Like, nope, you're going to kick us out. You're taking her whether you want her or not. You don't get to bring in some pretty boy from California or somebody else or whatever. I can't verify. I cannot say that's 100% truth, but I'm telling you.
It doesn't matter who did it.
Yeah.
The country is going to have somebody
that no one voted for.
Incompetent.
Yeah.
Proven track record of failure, and that wasn't the people's choice.
Right.
It doesn't matter if Biden did the picking or
Hunter.
If the DNC did the picking. They took the power of the people away. They didn't allow the people to choose who they wanted, and they're still going to go on their little puppet deal. And everyone knows that Biden was incompetent. Everyone knew that he was physically and mentally incapable of doing the job. And so who's been doing it? And since he stepped down, who's been in charge?
Because she's been campaigning.
Like, who's in charge?
Yeah.
This is the same conversation that you and I had a couple of years ago around Christmas time, where the fucking Secretary of Defense went missing for a month.
Right.
Who's in charge?
While Israel and Ukraine were going on. Yes.
Who's in charge?
Yeah. That was December of last year.
We got North Korea rattling sabers.
Yeah. Blowing up railways.
Israel going into Lebanon. And we just pledged another 400 freaking million to the Ukraine.
Right.
Like, who's in charge?
You know who could use 400 million? The people of Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina. Yes, they could use 400 million.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, so I want to real quick. I want to roll it back to something because I brought the stats up and I get a chance to do it. We've had a couple guests on here before from from Custom Border Patrol and stuff, and it just came out last week. New numbers. We've talked about the northern border here before and how they're funneling them across through the res and stuff. So in 2021, they had 365 illegals cross the northern border. In 2022, it was 1,065. Keep those two numbers in mind. In 2023, 6,900. In 2024 so far, over 19,000. Our CBP friend who we've had on before said it's more like 100,000. but
I mean,
19,000 versus 365 have just the northern border.
yeah,
Those
those are
people in New York,
encounters.
the people in those ones are catching. The people in New York
Yeah.
and Chicago, New York City, Chicago, aren't all being bussed up. They're coming across the northern border and coming right to those cities, to
Yeah.
Detroit, to Chicago, to New York, all those areas, Philly, right? That's where they're going. But anyways, I want to roll it back to that. I don't want it too much on
No,
it.
it's
But since we're talking politics, let me ask you this. There's a divisiveness. We saw divisiveness in 08 and 12 and 16 and 20. We've seen this country split left, right, and center, especially after 2020 and the BLM riots and
oh
everything
yeah.
else, right? That was like some of the worst I've ever seen this country, probably in my lifetime, because obviously I wasn't around, or old enough to know in the 60s and the 50s when there was, that was obviously a very bad time. But in my lifetime, that's the worst it's ever been. Now we've got this going on. Like you say, you've got, you got certain talking points each side, everyone's supporting. There's really been no three branches of government checking each other, everything else. It's all about race still. It's race, race, race. And it's, you got Obama saying, scolding and trying to guilt black men into voting for Kamala, right? We had Biden saying 2020, if you don't vote for me, you're not black, right? It's all this is going on. Do you think it's recoverable? Do you think there's a way for this country to mend and come back together?
Yes, I do.
That's
First and
possible.
foremost,
I think it's a
first and
possible.
foremost, our country needs Jesus Christ. Like first and foremost, we need to bring our culture back to loving our neighbor as ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. So, absolutely believe that there's hope. I believe in the hope. I pray for the hope every day. But what we need to accomplish that outside of what I just said is we have to stop trying to make everybody special. Like we need to go back to being American and being proud of being American. It's shouldn't, and I believe we can do this with sports. And I believe that because one of the easiest ways that we divided the country was with sports by promoting Black Lives Matter, which is based on this, predicated on a myth, right? And now everyone knows like that was a total sham. Like it didn't help anybody. And it wasn't about marginalized people. It was about making money, and it was about burning down towns, and it was about like a weird urban rage of victimhood that is,
They guilted money and
yeah.
people and corporations into just throwing money at
Like,
something to make themselves feel.
if you think the government owes you something, you're the problem. Like you're the problem. If you think the government owes you something,
Yeah,
you're the problem. You were born in the only true free market space, the only true free society in the history of mankind. You hit the geographic lottery. Uh, you have people lobbying to get $50 an hour to work at fast food restaurants.
oh, I
I
know.
mean, Americans have no idea how fortunate and how blessed they are. And if we could just stop, I had the pleasure of sitting down and talking with two just fine gentlemen today. And they're pilots, private pilots, for a pretty famous NASCAR guy. And they're taking a quick little stopover, to get a little bit of respite before the big race in Las Vegas that's coming up. And they came here because where they were at, they've been going all out for the past couple of weeks, taking using their private aircraft and helping regular people until they got shut down. And we got to
Obviously,
stop.
you're talking about the hurricane relief efforts in Appalachia, North
I
Carolina.
am. And we got to stop taking misfortune and politicizing it. All right. So we had this natural disaster. And instead of like, and in the worst of times, you see the best in people. You know, a couple of years ago, I had the benefit of working with some great guys and gals. We did some wonderful things helping Hurricane Harvey recovery. Super proud of that. And in those dark moments, you saw, in those hard times, in those bad times, you saw the best in people. The Cajun Navy coming together, you know, like these guys with their little duck boats, just the craziest things that you would have seen, just helping people.
Now they got the Cajun Air Force.
Right now, and now you got, you know, this private Air Force. However, they got grounded. You got a person that spent his entire life allegedly serving the public and public safety in terms of like a fire chief, you know, like arresting people. And, you know, you got organizations shutting down airspace, you know, because they feel that they need to. You know, Ronald Reagan said it best. Like, if you think the government's going to come save you, you're wrong.
Yeah.
You're relying on the government to solve your problems.
Right.
You have a much bigger problem. We need to go back to loving our neighbors as ourselves. We need to stop trying to politicize everything. It's not about politics. It's not us versus them. When that water was coming out of the sky and flooding those towns and washing an entire town into a lake, it wasn't like saying, I'm only going to touch a Democrat's house, or I'm only going to touch a Republican's house. I'm going to skip like this other independent guy's house. No, it flooded everybody.
It's what we saw in 9/11, right? People help people, and sadly, it takes horrific things like that. Like you said, in the worst of times, we see the best of people. You do sometimes see the worst of people, but really, you see the best of people helping. Because at the end of the day, all that other shit is first world problem, and it really doesn't matter. What matters is your safety, your loved ones, and your livelihood, and that kind of stuff. And yeah, the neighbor who may have a Harris sign in there that got washed away next to your Trump sign, you're both helping each other. You're both reaching out for each other. You're doing that kind of stuff, right? No one
like I believe, you know, we need to. I believe there's hope. I believe we can come back, but I
just hope it doesn't take a disaster. I hope it doesn't.
It's an individual effort,
right?
I'll say that it's an individual effort. You have to make the decision to be nice to the person and not judge them because they got a bumper sticker on their car, right? It takes you making that conscious decision when you drive past and you see that whatever sign in somebody's yard to be like, you know, they have a right to an opinion. I have a right to mine.
Look, at the end of the day,
if you're less than me for having it,
right? If you're a God-fearing person and you believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, then you know that He forgave the people that did much worse stuff than has ever happened to us. Yeah. Right? He walked into the den. He walked into the center of those places and confronted them. But at the same time, everyone was made in the likeness and the image of God. All of us are. And we are all brothers and sisters at the end of the day, right? And if you are a believer in Jesus, then you should be praying for everyone, regardless if they vote or if they vote at all.
And you should. I'm not saying you can't have an opinion,
right?
And I'm not about censorship. And so I don't want my following statement to be taken the wrong way. If you were cheering for the assassination of Donald Trump, like you should probably take an internal look at your character.
Yeah.
You know, we're about to have an election, which is probably one of the most important elections that the country's ever had, because the country's on a really bad trajectory. And that's not a political statement. That's an economic statement. That's a moral statement.
It's a security statement.
That's a security statement. Like that's, like it doesn't matter, what party you are. Like the country is going in a downward trajectory. We should be able to like vote, know that it's a legitimate vote that's like not rigged. And afterwards, we should not worry that if we won, our neighbor has a green light to kill our cat. And if we lose, we should have the courage to do what's right and acknowledge and accept and then continue the process. We have 3 branches.
Right.
So if we don't like the outcome of the election, well, there's another election real soon. Like go down and vote. You don't want critical race theory in your school? Well, then you should be in the school board meeting talking to your school board about it.
Right.
You don't want, drag queen story time? Go talk to your school board about it. If it's in the public library, well, go talk to your city council about it. Like, you go do this. There's only one savior out there, and he's not here right now.
So something my pastor said during the last election was great, which is like, he was talking about is in probably 2019, 2020, people getting all upset and thinking that he was going to pick one way or the other, which he said he wasn't going to do. He was like, look, you can get all worked up over any of these guys, but they're only there for 4 years or 8 years. The only leader you need to worry about is the one that's going to be there forever.
Eternity.
Yeah. They're only going to be there 4 or 8 years. And he said, no matter who you like or who they are, they're going to let you down one way or another because they're man, they're human, and they're fallible. But there's only one leader that really matters, and that's the one that you're with forever.
Yeah, and you're not religious. You don't share our faith. No problem. I'll put it in military terms. You only have a commander for a short period of time, but you're married to that lady forever.
That's right. Hopefully forever.
Find that compromise.
Yeah.
Find that compromise.
That's right. But yeah. So, something else interesting, we're coming up on an hour here pretty soon, but I want to kind of talk about is with 19 days left, we always hear stats coming out, right? They have jobs reports that come out. They have, market reports that come out, the GDP and stuff like that. And sometimes they go back and they change them and all that stuff. Well, this just came out is that we just found out that the FBI quietly updated crime data from 2022. Now, some people are like, well, it's 2022. What's a big, well, that's what we reference, right? We don't have crime data for 2024. So when you see them referenced in on the news and different stuff, right, what they compare, they can only compare against 23, 22, 20. They go back just a couple of years because they've compiled all that data. So the FBI just revised the 22 crime data where originally they said it was violent crimes were down 2.1%, right?
But they're not.
They're not. They have actually had a 4.5% increase in 22 over 21. Now, what does that mean? 2.1, 4.5. It doesn't sound like a lot. I would agree. What constituted that was an additional 1,699, pretty much 1,700 murders.
Yeah.
A little over 7,700 rapes, over almost 34,000, about 33,000 and change robberies, and over 37,000 aggravated assaults. That's on top of what was already reported for 22. So those numbers that I just gave you went from a 2.1% drop to a 4.5% increase. The FBI just changed those numbers and just like updated their website or whatever and just didn't say anything about it, right? Why is that important? It's like when a news story is published and it's on the front page and it's like Toby Nunn's an a-hole, the whole town agrees and all that stuff. And then 3 days later, I'm like, oh, our bad. We meant Toby Smith. And that's on like bottom of page 6. Not Toby Nunn. It was Toby Nunn with a one N, not two N's, right? And That's what this is. It's like, that's huge. That's a big number when everyone's probably touting. I'm going to say probably in early 23, they were saying, hey, look, our crime numbers are down. Look how much safer we've made it. Don't worry about the border. Now we're finding out, no, it wasn't that way. This is the kind of shady shit that happens.
Yeah, it wasn't a mistake. No, this is just further proof, right? Just like Zuckerberg's letter to Jim Jordan. This is just further proof that the United States government has been deceiving the American people and, manipulating information or providing misinformation to the American people to further people's political agenda. It's just like the way they talk about inflation. And, I had to explain this to my kid the other day. They're like, inflation, the rate of inflation is down. Yes. But that doesn't mean inflation's down. It means the rate at which it's growing is less. It's just not growing as fast.
Right.
So if I weighed 230 pounds and I was losing, like 5 pounds, oh, my weight is down. But if I was saying like I was gaining 5 pounds a month and now I'm only gaining 2 pounds a month, yeah, my weight gaining is down. But that doesn't mean I'm a weight loss.
Still gaining weight. Right.
I'm still gaining weight.
Right. It's not gaining as fast.
Yeah.
Right. And these numbers are important because in the last week, both
1,600 murders. That's 1,600 sons, daughters, wives, children, cousins, uncles that aren't with us anymore,
right?
Because they died in a violent way,
right?
And that's these numbers, names,
right?
That got reduced down to a hidden number to serve somebody's agenda, and
and talk about 7,700 rapes, 7,700, probably all women, but maybe not. 7,700 more violated. Probably.
Well, the Diddy files come out. That rape number's going way up.
That's true. It may go up some more. He could kick it up another %.
Yeah, I'm not laughing.
No,
at the victims.
No,
I'm laughing at.
Diddy. But yeah,
there's people hiding information from you. There's people that you think have your best interests at heart, and they're not good people.
Well, the thing about this, these numbers, why they're important, is because right now both candidates have been on a lot of podcasts recently in the last week or two. They are really making a push, right? Trump did one on Andrew Schultz, Theo Vaughn, Kamala was on Charlemagne the God, and she's been on different ones and stuff. And they're touting these, right? She's especially touting these numbers, saying our crimes, obviously she's being asked some hard questions by podcasters who maybe aren't mainstream media. And they're saying, what about the border? What about this? They're asking her a few things and maybe they're not following up, but she's continually touting, just like President Biden did, how the numbers are down and Trump is lying because, our violent numbers are down. The FBI, who could question the FBI? Well, they're still touting these numbers. And as recently in the last few days in these podcast interviews, and now it's like, well, you might want to skip over 22. Maybe only go back to 23, because right now 22 does not show that it's down. It went up 4.5%, and that doesn't fit with your narrative, right?
Well, I can tell you it's gone up even more. We just, the empirical data hasn't been produced, right? Being published. Sorry, not produced, published.
Right.
Any law enforcement agency at any level will tell you that they've experienced more of many things, especially if we're talking about drug-related crime, not marijuana, like drugs, like hard drugs.
Right. Fentanyl, opioids.
Drug-related crime, it's been an uptick. Fentanyl, been an uptick. Overdoses are up. Robberies involving drugs up. So it's pretty simple. Pierre Poilievre out of Canada, has a famous, cut back to or clap back to a reporter that doesn't understand that if there's no consequences for crime, crime goes up. You know, if you decriminalize shoplifting, people are going to steal more things. If you have a no bail policy, or, you know, no bail policy on certain crimes, New York, right?
Right.
You know, I think second degree murder is like a bailless crime, right?
Yep. Yeah. So is arson. So is
Like if there's no consequence,
dealing drugs in school grounds. Yeah.
crime's going to go up. If you say that you can sleep on and shit on the sidewalk, San Francisco, Austin, people will.
Yep.
You know, like
it's all about carrots and sticks. And if you have no sticks, people, it's anarchy, right? That's the story. That's what Antifa wants, right? They want anarchy. They want just no rules, no laws. Well, that's what will happen. Will people act any way they want, because there's no ramification, there's no penalty, there's no punishment if they act unaccordingly.
Yeah, no, like when you have a movie franchise like The Purge, you know, like people want to live it out. You know, that it's like the video games. You know, you make more and more first-person shooter games, you're going to have a lot more first-person shooters.
And more realistic, and people lose touch of reality of what.
How do you think ISIS was able to recruit so well? They made their recruiting videos like first-person shooter games.
Right.
And wow, recruitment went up.
Right.
But
yeah, it is these numbers are it. You really got to dig in them. But the bottom line is that you know, you need to take time to try to understand. I mean, that one thing I do like about these podcasts is you're getting to see them. I can tell you, the Theo Von one is great. If you have a chance to watch it yet, Toby, I mean, I
love Theo Von.
They talk about, you know, Theo Von talks about his 10 years of sobriety and what he was on drugs and this and that. And he's educating President, and Trump is asking him, right? He's like, which one do you think's the worst? And he's like, opioid. And he's like, really? He goes, yeah, that's the worst. Like, President Trump is asking him for his opinion. Yeah. And President Trump talked at great length about, you know, his losing his brother, who was an alcoholic, and why Trump has never smoked a cigarette, drank, or done drugs. And he talked about what happened to his family when his brother died. I mean, he really opened up, and you get to understand the person, not the image the media plays, or even the image that he puts on when he steps onto a stage at a rally. But he's sitting down with a guy who is you know, a comedian, but at the same time is just a normal everyday kind of person, and they're just talking topics, right? Just and that kind of stuff. And the Andrew Schultz one's great too, and is a phenomenal interview. But you know, Kamala had hers with Charlemagne the God. She had hers with a couple others. Unfortunately, she has not answered them or conducted herself in them any different than you see on stage. It's the same.
There's intelligence levels there, right? No offense to Charlemagne the God, but not an intelligent guy. Andrew Schultz, super intelligent.
Yeah.
Theo Von, like, I don't know how that dude's brain works, but it makes me laugh.
I would never thought I would hear someone talk about hookers on scooters in it to a president, but he dropped hookers on scooters in the interview, and I was just
you know, you got guys like Joe Rogan, you know, crazy intelligent. Sean Ryan, crazy intelligent.
Oh, yeah. Did you know that Kamala and Trump are both in talks with possibly going on Joe Rogan? Both are in talks.
That would be an interesting.
I would watch that all 3 hours. If it would go 3 hours, I would watch it.
Yeah.
Trump's I don't see Kamala's going 3 hours, but Trump's.
Yeah, I just don't. I don't think it's going to happen. You know, Joe Rogan said in the past, you know, like, people have tried, you know, to get on there and stuff, and he's not a buyable guy. Like, you're not going to buy your way onto a show. He either wants to talk to you or he doesn't. And, you know, like, I don't think he cares about ratings, and I don't think he cares about deals. I think other people do. And, you know, they're smart to get guys like that. But the intelligence required to communicate with certain people, you know, if you're going to take layups, and I think Charlemagne the God's a layup, you know.
Yeah, he didn't ask hard questions. He
no, and he's not going to, because he's bought and paid for. You know, like, he's a guy, you know, the Breakfast Club's a long running show. He's got money tied into it. You know, it's sponsored, right? So like he has to answer. He is a boss. Joe Rogan, Sean Ryan, those guys, they don't have bosses.
We have sponsors, but there's zero paying sponsors, so
Right,
you're not bought either. So we would be,
you know, like, and that's,
we do it because we like these guys and we like these companies, and we're like, yeah.
I think if it happened after the election, it would be far more interesting. You know, some of my favorite Joe Rogan podcasts are Tulsi Gabbard. Like you know, he asked for pretty good things. The Robert Kennedy one was phenomenal.
Right.
You know, like
Elon Musk was great.
Oh man, like levels. Just
Yeah.
and that's the thing is we put people in these boxes, and I can't believe, like, the whole Trump sobriety thing. People talk like this guy is such a scumbag, but this dude's had the discipline to not drink his entire life. You know, like lifestyles of the rich and famous where they walk around holding caviar and champagne everywhere, and this dude hasn't had champagne. You know what kind of discipline that takes? I don't think I have a drinking problem, but I can go ahead and say that, you know, like I'll at least have a drink a week. You know, like some weeks there's more. Some weeks there's less.
And sometimes you have real stressful times, right? Drink, and people that smoke will light up a lot of cigarettes, and that dude's had some stressful times to never.
Yeah, but there's the you know, you're like the guy's vice is McDonald's hamburgers and Diet Coke, and you're busting his balls over that. Meanwhile, we've had people snorting Coke, smoking crack, snorting Coke, smoking crack, smoking weed, all in the office. And you're like, well, that's cool. Like, yeah. I'm not here to judge, and I'm not here, like, I got my own problems. And if I could take a good bong rip right now, I probably would. But it's you're ignoring that. Like, think of the discipline that takes. Yeah. Oh, and it's going to prolong his life. You know?
Right. But he experienced a traumatic loss, like many Americans have.
Huge loss
early in his life that shaped him that way, right? Some people experience that. They lose a loved one to drugs or alcohol, and they turn to that, right? They bury themselves in a bottle and that kind of stuff. I would venture to say, and I don't know, I imagine most people probably would go that route than say, I'm never touching that. Right. Yeah. They may after they come out of realize that's what killed my loved one or person I cared about. I'm never going to touch a drop again. Right. Or I almost lost my own life or hurt somebody because I was hammered. But for people to have that and say, nope, I'm not even going to try to kill the pain with that. Right. That's
no, I mean, look at the veteran community. I'll say this really quickly. In the veteran community, like, substance abuse is huge, especially alcohol. Right.
Yeah.
Especially alcohol. Guys get drunk, end up killing themselves. And, you know, what do we do?
Either on purpose or accident.
Either on purpose or accident. Yeah. But what do? We get together and drink about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
even guys that just we lose brothers, we lose by accidents or in combat. We get together and drink about it. I mean,
yeah, no,
I'm gonna be hunting this weekend. There may or may not be some alcohol.
But
not before hunting, just to be clear, not before hunting.
No, clearly. But it's just there's these little things that sometimes I'm like you're mad at the guy because he said something 25 years ago, and you won't give him the benefit of the doubt, knowing that he is pretty sober. Like, I gotta tell you, someone that's not sober, like, one of the commercials that I saw was nothing but like drunk Kamala shots. And like that's the vice president of the United States representing us on the largest stage that humanity has. And she's drunk.
I think our
Like
past speaker of the House. I think our past speaker of
doesn't
the House was drunk most of the time that she was in. As
doesn't
Speaker
take her
of the
job
House.
seriously.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're like, oh well, this guy, you know.
Look, dude, I guarantee you have, and I know I have done and said dumb shit 20. That's what gets me, like with Kavanaugh, with all the different, like, well, 20 years when you were in high school, you said this. You know, I said dumb shit 5 years ago. I said it probably 5 weeks ago, and I probably did stuff I regret.
I
Yeah, when I was in
definitely
high
grabbed
school.
some boobs back then I shouldn't have grabbed.
Yeah. But you know what? Yeah, we all grow better, right? We all look and go,
Yep.
wow, we've all grown up. You and I have known each other a long time, and we have both matured and grown up in the years that we've known each other. And we were grown adults with families already, right? We change. Our experiences change us.
I don't know if I was a grown adult back then. I mean, biologically,
You're
but
a combat
I self-identified as a miscreant.
Yeah, you were a combat veteran. So
I was a straight up upcountry degen.
Yeah, you were. That's that part of Canada you're from. But hey, we covered a lot of things. Anything that we didn't cover that you'd like to hit on before we wrap up tonight? This has been a great show.
No, man. We say it every time. We need to do it more often. Two, I really hope people vote. I unfortunately am not going to be able to vote in this election. I have yet to attain citizenship.
That's a whole other topic for another show.
But yeah, it is. But no, exercise the greatest right that you have, and that's, you know, to pick your governance. And if the person that you pick doesn't make it, you know, like, pull out that pocket constitution and read it. You know, like, you have the right to seek grievance. You're not crazy if you want to make sure that things are legitimate. You're not a bad person to fact check. You know, we one thing we've learned in the past 5 or 6 years is that, you know, the government don't always have our best interests at heart, even though we feel that they do. And, you know, do your research.
And one thing I want to highlight. Yeah, I want to highlight is if the person you want doesn't win.
Yeah.
It's not like you throw your hands up and say, screw it, well, I got to wait 4 more years. It's a continual process. There's more elections in 2 years. Yeah. As Toby was saying, excuse me, you can still be contacting the local office of your elected representatives. They can't executive order everything. Congress is still there. As Toby said at the start of this, there are 3 branches of government. They are meant to be checks and balances. Go back and watch those Saturday morning cartoons, right? Yeah. They're there. So, and in 2 years, there's midterm elections, and those have consequences. So, but at the end of the day, nobody, I don't care if you're all Kamala or all Trump, should wish bad things or anything on the other person if they get elected, right? Yeah. You don't. The pilot freaking jumps in front of you at the Starbucks at the airport, and you're like, that guy's an a-hole, and you find out he's your pilot. You're not like sitting there hoping, I hope that dude crashes because he cut me off and took the last macchiato. No, he's your pilot. If you're a Trump person and Kamala wins, you should be praying if you pray, and hoping and doing what you can by civilly, you know, being involved with your reps to make sure that she makes the best decisions possible. And if Trump wins, same thing. You know, hope he makes the best decisions possible and has the betterment of the country in mind and not the betterment of party. But you don't throw your hands up, quit, say, I didn't vote for that person. It's not my problem. It's not my job. You're an American. You are always involved in the civic duty and the civic process. It never stops.
Just to caveat that, of all the major issues that people say concern them the most about this election, they're all local issues. And you know, like,
yeah, that's a good point. Security,
they're all local issues.
Abortion,
you can affect your local economy. If you're concerned about reproductive rights and women's right, like reproductive health rights, that's a local issue. Go deal with it. You're concerned about what your kids are learning in school, get active in your school district. You know, like
town councils and yep.
to sit there and cry because you think this party or this person is ruining your life, like, well, you're wrong. And if you believe that one of those people is your savior, you're also wrong. And so get some Jesus and take accountability for your life. Take accountability for what's important to you. I'm a father. I got daughters, and they both expressed, their concern about that stuff. And I've told them both, like, hey, you know how to solve this problem. Like, if this truly concerns you, well, then you need to go to the state house and you need to talk to people. Like, that's the beauty of America. You have the First Amendment right to say what you want, say what you think, practice and your faith as you want. And if you have a problem with it, you can seek grievance. Like, and if someone tries to retribute or have retribution upon you, well, that's what the second's for. Get out my house.
Right.
Get out my house, bitch.
That's right. Yeah. If you try to take away the first, remember that there's a second.
And the third.
And a third. But, all right. Hey, thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Episode 342. Got Stu and Nunn here. We really appreciate you tuning in. Toby, great to see you, brother. And yeah, I think we're down to 18 days. I don't know, whatever it was. But yeah. Anyways, thank you so much. Hopefully we'll see you again next week or sometime soon. I'm going to be traveling next week, so I don't know what I'm going to be, if I'm going to be able to do pull a show off,
next week, I'm going to be in the Bisbee Black and Blue trying to make some money.
Yeah, isn't this a big month for you guys down there? It's October. I remember October is your big month. Yeah, it's turning crazy.
Here we go.
Yeah. All right. Well, good luck down there. Everybody, make sure you check out Marvita Sport Fishing. I almost said Red, right? Marvita, and check out the Porch. It's still called the Porch?
It is.
All right. Down in Cabo San Lucas. Yeah, look up Toby. If you find Toby and go down there and you say, hey, I'm a Stu and the Nunn fan, I guarantee
free drinks.
There you go. I knew it was going to be something. I was about to commit him to something. I wasn't going to go that far, but there you go. And he'll sit there and talk to you all night long and give you his opinion on all of it. But make sure you check out Gear for Grunts. Alpha Leap Performance just got me some more pre-workout. Just got me some pipe hitter yesterday. Had my replenishment. And talking with Travis, we're probably looking at having Travis on in 2 weeks, brother. So maybe get you on with me and him. But yeah. So, all right, everybody have a great night. Thank you so much for tuning in to Stu and the Nunn. And God bless and take it easy and have a good night.